Okay, so it just let me know that you popped on. So right now it looks like it's just me and you. So I figure I'm going to give people maybe another couple of more minutes and then I'll start. Hello, Francine and Devin. Just waiting for people to jump on and then I'll get started. No, I can't see or hear you, but your question and whatever you type in will pop up. I first Facebook Live, so it's a little interesting not being able to see anybody. Yeah, interesting not being able to see anybody or hear anybody, basically talking to myself, right? So it's almost like I have to envision that people are actually out there on this, paying attention. So it's interesting because if I crack a joke, I like people laughing. If I crack a joke here, it's just quiet. So give me some LOLs in the chat would be helpful. I'm gonna get started in 1 minute here. So I can talk to you guys. You guys I feel comfortable with. Pretty much know my story. Exactly. You can roll your eyes. I don't see anything. Make faces. Crack jokes to the people next to you. I don't get any of it. So anyway, why am I doing this? What brought me here? I just want to jump in. I'll get more comfortable once I get going like this. I have no problem talking. I actually really enjoy it, which is interesting because many years ago I used to be terrified, and I would not take college classes because of that whole, presentation in front of the class. So I like it now. So that's been pretty cool. So basically, I'm just going to try to talk a little bit about myself, about my coaching, what I do, how I help people, how I help myself, and how I show up for my family, what impacted me, what led me down the road to wanting to change and learn about the type of work that I do. So, yeah. Hopefully you find it interesting. So I'll jump into a little bit of my story. I drank. I used to drink a lot of alcohol. And it was good for a while until it started creating a lot of problems in my life. And even after all the consequences and the problems that it created, it was still hard for me to make the connection that it was my drinking, because that's my number one. So don't look at that. Because what I learned now is alcohol does something for me and my system that people who are not in my system don't understand. So when you tell me to slow down on my drinking or to not drink, you don't understand how much I have going on within me. And so to not drink is going to expose a lot of things that I have going on inside of me, and I just can't have that. I didn't know that then. Drinking back then was fun. It was what my friends did. It was playing sports. It was being like one of the guys type of thing. So I never looked at my alcohol abuse as anything other than I just need to control it a little bit better. I don't like that it creates other problems. I just need to do a better job with drinking. I never realized how deep this stuff ran. And now I look at alcohol abuse as just like scratching the surface, really, which to so many people, it's hard to fathom that. For a lot of people, it's like, no, if they just stop drinking, if they just slow down. And I just know that there's just way too much that needs to be looked at, processed, healed. And it's not just the drinking. So I got to put my old man glasses on. You could do your fake laugh, Jay. Yeah, I need these glasses to help me see. But anyway, fast forward to a lot of problems, a lot of issues in life, and I started getting sober. So that helped me along the way. Getting sober was a big turning point in my life for sure. One of the best things I ever did, because it just put me back on track of living life. And so I thought I was good. For a while, I was sober and not drinking. So that's the goal. And for a long time, probably about 12 years, it worked great for me. And and so it was hard for me to wrap my head around that there was more stuff going on underneath the surface, because I had did so much work when it came to self-development and spirituality and not drinking. I mean, it's a massive sacrifice. And then I was doing a lot of other things along that journey. I started exercising again and eating right and really trying to take care of myself and show myself love. So all these years later, through the drinking and then getting sober, I started having, got married, had a son, we bought a house, I started a job, and it was a really hard, chaotic time, buying a new house, having a baby, starting this new job, and it was a lot. It was a lot of pressure and stress. And even though I wasn't looking to drink alcohol, that obsession was now gone from me. I still don't look at to drink to help cope with anything. I had other ways that ran a lot deeper than just the drinking to help me function in my marriage and how I showed up as a parent. But there was, there's no running from it. There's no running from it at all. And marriage has a remarkable way of shining a light on everything that you have unhealed inside of you. It's just marvelous. I mean, there's no better marksman out there than being in a marriage, because it's just wild. What I've learned, and I'll talk a little bit, but I'm not going to get too deep into this. But the survival systems that we develop from our own childhood and how we carry that throughout our lives, and then we bring it in to this relationship, especially a marriage and parenting, and we have no idea. Like I don't realize that I'm in survival mode, right? That's something I learned, but I don't, it's like I have issues with my wife. It's not survival mode, right? My wife has issues with me. There are things about me she would love to change. But who knew that that there was just so much more going on to that? And, you do the therapy thing and you hear a lot of the same things out there of like, you need more date nights, or you need better communication. And it's not that. It's I might get redundant by saying this over and over, but it's so much deeper than going on a date night or trying to communicate, because, and I've experienced this with my wife, who's on the call here, Francine, as well. You can try to communicate all day long, but if you're living out of these survival patterns, as soon as something gets said, or a tone of voice changes, or a facial expression, can trigger us right into a childhood memory that we have pushed way back into our minds. We don't even know it's there, right? All we see is what's right in front of us. We just see the behavior that we have with our spouse and their behavior. We don't see what it's triggering underneath that. And that's the work that I do. I get into this inner child and parts work. Again, I'll talk about in a little while. But for now, it's like, okay, I'm not drinking. And I thought that was going to be the cure-all, because that's a huge sacrifice, right? Like, I'm not drinking. So what else? What else is there to take a look at? So I just want to talk about some of the things that were brought up within me and my marriage, and maybe you can relate to. yeah, I had a lot of childhood wounds that I didn't even know existed. I never even heard of the term childhood wounds a couple of years ago. And so when I started out on this path to try to heal, I was, I'm like everybody else. I'm like my clients when they come in. I'm stuck in anger and resentment, and you don't understand, and you don't know what I'm dealing with. And, not just marriage-wise, but parenting and stress and finances and trying to exercise and take care of myself and health issues and parents getting older and just all different types of stress that we all, if we are this age, can relate to. And what I started to see was, as I continued to work on that stuff, I started to explore what's underneath these parts. Now, you can call them thoughts because sometimes parts are a little confusing. It's like, oh, what do you mean by parts? So to help people understand is, picture a basketball team. Everybody on the team has a role to play, right? If somebody on that team is not playing their role and they start playing somebody else's role, the whole system gets impacted. Everybody starts looking around as to why is the point guard not bringing the ball up? Like, what's happening here? All he wants to do is rebound. And a lot of tension can start happening with these inner parts. And teams are like that when it comes to trying to be on the same page and win. And our system has these parts. Same thing. If our system with these parts are not working together, our true self, right, or some would say the way God created us to be, it's not going to show because we're living behind the veil of all these protective parts that we have in our system. And that's hard to grasp, because we can only see so far in front of us. And that was where I was at. I don't see how something right now is bringing up something for me that happened, in childhood. That just, this is not an intellectual game, This is something our mind can't wrap its head around. So it's almost like faith, like you have to believe and just go along with the process. You're not fully on board yet. You have your doubts, you have your concerns, you have your worries, but you just keep showing up, one foot in front of the other. And slowly over time, and I know that people wrote books about habits and stuff, but that's how the change starts. Most of us, including myself, I want the magnificent change. I want the miracle, or I want the solution, which was, for me, alcohol. I want something immediate, right? That immediate gratification that you've heard about. I want something that's going to jump right in and take care of the issues I have, whether that's emotional or something that's going on outside of me. And this work is not that. This is a process. And it's deep, so you can't just jump right in, because I do deal with a lot of trauma. And it's not so much PTSD that we think of, like the one-time events, military person off at war, or, a horrific car accident, things like that. This is a complex trauma. This is more about almost not what happened to you, but what didn't happen to you in your childhood. Because growing up, we have all these developmental stages that we go through. And Erickson talks about it. I use his framework for that. We have the infancy stage, the toddler stage, the preschool stage, the school age stage, and then we have our teenage years, and it goes beyond that. And we have a lot of needs that need to be met as kids. And I use something called PEERS that helps me remember it, PIERS. And it boils down to physical, intellectual, emotional, relational, and spiritual needs. And when these needs go unmet throughout childhood, they can leave a lot of wounds. And some of these situations we go through can be traumatic. And then if we have nobody to go to help us process what's going on in our life, that's when the trauma actually sinks in. And there's a great book by Bessel van der Kolk called The Body Keeps the Score, meaning our body absorbs this trauma and it lives within us. And, the years go on, we get older, we try to get careers and get promotions and make money and get married and have children. But this old stuff is still very much alive and needs to, be looked at. And that's hard to accept, that my adult life is impacted by my childhood. Because again, I have these defensive mechanisms that come up and say, no, my parents were great and my parents really worked hard and they tried their best and it wasn't easy for them and they had it worse than I did growing up and they gave me a great education. We took family vacations and none of that's going to help me. It's going to keep me stuck. What I'm not saying is that parents are always to blame and are, the problem. But it's important to take a look at what you didn't receive in your childhood and that it's okay to actually go ahead and voice that, because many of us, we're terrified to actually bring any of that up. We don't want to talk about it with anybody. Yeah, that's exactly it. What I've come to see with not every parent, though, but with many parents, is that you can look for the good in your parents. There's no doubt. I do believe that we need to look at good and what didn't work if we're going to try to break any cycles. But at the same time, many of us try to fool ourselves. And again, it's a protective strategy to not take a look at these deeper things. I know for me, it was, I felt like a certain type of loyalty to my family. Like, how can I talk about what happened to me in childhood? I almost felt ungrateful in a way, that my parents worked so hard to give me X, Y, and Z. And here I am talking about, maybe some of the emotional things that I didn't get. It almost sounds like I was spoiled a little bit. Again, that's a protective part of mine, I've learned. It's just really keeping me from shining a light on any truth. And our mind and our thoughts are going to do a magnificent job at keeping us away from any pain that we have still inside of us. And the problem that I have as a coach doing this work, and that I had also doing this work, is that I don't even see how deep, how deep this is, how these parts are working in my system. Like if somebody says, oh, you're just in a protective strategy right now, you're in your defense mechanism. That's not really your thought, by the way. Most people are like, what are you talking about? That's exactly what I'm thinking right now. Like, we can't wrap our head around it. It's, it takes time. And I also want you to remember that I've been 16 years on this journey of sobriety and doing a lot of this inner work. The past 4 years, I have dove into inner child and parts work. So, if I'm speaking a little further from where you're at, that's okay. And I do try to remember where I was at myself the first few days, few weeks, few months of getting involved in this work, because I was not an easy client. getting sober and doing this work. Like I believe what I believe. I feel strongly about my beliefs. I think I'm right a lot of the time. I'm willing to acknowledge where I'm at fault, but only when I'm willing to acknowledge when I'm at fault. Again, those are all protective ways to try to help ourselves out. And one of the parts or the ways that I functioned in my marriage that was creating an issue with developing this deeper connection that I wanted with my wife was I had a tendency to kind of keep a lot of things in. They call it shutting down. I never knew I did this. I didn't even know that this was a survival strategy. Like I'm not I believe, right, that this is on somebody else, whether it's my wife or just somebody else in my life, And then I became aware of this part of me that was kind of kept a lot of things in and shut down. And the more I started practicing and becoming aware, I'm like, wow, I do this a lot. And then I started developing a relationship with that part of me, right? Almost in a way where I would even ask questions of it. And this is, again, we do this in practice here, where it's like, why are you shutting down? I would just ask that part of me, why are you shutting down? What's the matter? You okay? What are you worried about? And you'll be amazed when you practice this long enough. In the beginning, I'm like, I don't get it. That's weird. It makes me uncomfortable. I feel like I'm talking to myself. As time goes on, I keep going back to sports, but you don't just pick up a football and just go out on the football field in college and just start playing college football. It's got to start way before that. Now, you can get better as the years go on, but you have to learn the rules and the skills, and you have to be coached. Same thing in this type of work. People aren't just, unless you have like parents that are very aware of this, which in my case, I've come across many adults whose parents were not, aware of this. And so it has to become a practice in order to get any type of better at it. Same way in sports. So I just had to keep going into that shutting down part. And what I could tie it back to was I would shut down if I felt things were escalating, right? I can shut down if I felt that things were getting out of my control. Some people get more anxious and cling, right? They want to regain control. My way would be like going into the man's cave type of thing, like shutting it down, all engines off. The problem is it comes out sideways, right? I can make myself physically sick, not just me, but physical ailments can definitely play into harboring emotions for a long period of time without realizing it, especially when we live like this for years and years. Mentally, it has its issues, spiritually, emotionally. And so it can really block us off from, again, developing this deeper connection with our loved ones. And, what usually happens, too, is because my wife is more of an anxious attachment, and I tend to fall into the more avoidant, we just trigger the heck out of each other, right? Because the way that I try to calm myself down is by, I'm fine, I just, whatever, the anger stays within, I go work out, whatever, 100 different things we try to do just to get away from it, working, eating, shopping, exercise. All of these could just become major distractions in our life. Video gaming, spending. I know I said shopping, but spending, other areas. Gambling is another one. Again, all of this is trying to take me out of what I don't want to deal with. And because of that, that's going to trigger somebody who has more of the anxious attachment, right? Of they're going to come after you more, right? You're pulling away and they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Because to me, pulling away more, shutting down, that kept me safe. If somebody had more of a dominant personality in your childhood, if they showed more anger, if it was a little volatile in your childhood environment growing up, if there was a lot of alcohol or substance abuse going on, if nobody else was allowed to have or share what was going on emotionally, it was just that one person that dictated the emotional atmosphere of the home, then you could fall into, being hyper aware, hyper vigilant, and then learning to internalize that, because you know that if you didn't internalize it, that maybe something could happen to you. The problem is my wife is picking up on this, and that does not make her, she don't know any of this. She just sees a husband who's not willing to have certain conversations with her and is not, just shutting down. And because of where she might be at, and maybe you can relate in your own relationships and marriage, same thing. I know for my wife, she would feel better talking, right? Not shutting down. So that triggers me. That gets my survival system in high alert, and then she would want to, she needs to figure it out right away. And so now both of our survival systems are alive. They're activated. And she just sees me pulling away. Like, what kind of, I don't want to, this is not what I want, right? She could be thinking, I want a man who's going to sit here and talk about this stuff that's bothering me, right? And I'm over here thinking, man, oh man, like, how much of this are we going to have to talk about? Like, I'm trying to, I don't want to deal with this. This is causing too much, for me, right? So we have this thing. And before I get into any of this inner child and parts work, this is the cycle that so many couples fall into. They just see what's right in front of them. It's a game changer when not only can I see my protective parts come up as we're trying to communicate now, but I can even see her parts coming up as well. And I can almost help navigate through that, which goes a long way with being safe within each other, talking about. Because who knew, right, that you could be in a marriage, because marriage is supposed to be so intimate, and for me, it's yeah, of course, you're married. You share everything. And, and now doing this work and doing my own work, how many of us don't feel safe with who we're with? We don't. Emotionally, on an emotional level, many of us don't feel comfortable sharing what's really going on with us, because all we're going to do is trigger the other person. They're going to get defensive. They're going to go into protection mode again. And, all bets are off once that happens. So, there's multiple ways that our systems go into this type of trying to protect ourselves. And when we can start moving these parts around, more of who we are in here gets to show up. So it's very freeing when you get to share with your partner. Before we talk right now, I just want to let you know that I'm scared, right? That's an extreme vulnerability for some of us, especially if you maybe had said that to someone you trusted and loved, such as a parent in your past, and they met you with oh, don't worry about it, get over it, They just didn't have the emotional tools to help you work through it. And so you didn't learn. And so it would make it that much harder to actually come out and be that vulnerable, even with a spouse, and say, I'm really scared having this conversation. I just want you to keep that in mind while we try to work through some of our issues together, you know? Because, right, the defensiveness wants to come up. We want to blame the other person. We talk in a way that we can trigger the other person. And I've talked about this in the past. A great exercise to do is like, not only just a feelings exercise, but also like, I feel blank because blank, and then this is what I need. So like what I mean is, you never call when you're leaving work, you know, that's just going to strike up protective parts. Or you've been doing this for years. All that's going to do is just send the other person more into their survival mode. And that's going to anger you even more. So it's more about like, I feel angry, upset, alone. I feel sad because you're not talking to me lately. What I need from you is I need to know that you're with me, that we're in this together, that we still got each other's back, right? And maybe giving your spouse space just to talk a little bit, they won't go right into their protective mode. They'll feel more at peace within themselves. And they'll be able to then open up to you and say, I had no idea. I've just been dealing so much with kids or the job or, you know, my parents, whatever it is. And then they can share with you and give you insight into their world. And so now both of you are showing a lot of love to each other and a lot of compassion to each other, which is exactly what we want in a marriage and in these relationships that, you know, we want to build that connection first. So it's not easy. Still working on this. I'm very grateful that I wound up getting into this inner child and parts work, and that my wife has been very open to this work as well. And she's been playing her part in this as we grow together, which I think has been beautiful. I couldn't imagine doing this work on your own and then your partner still being just stuck in their own survival pattern ways and really not wanting to look at themselves. I just think it would be that much more challenging. I do think it's still doable, but it would definitely be a lot more challenging. And so, yeah, inner child work. I've posted about some of the inner child exercises I do. There's a ton of them, by the way. And that's why I love this work I do, because I get to practice it here with clients. Parts work, getting in touch with these different parts of us that are just really just trying to help our system out. And we have what's called manager parts, which means they're the more like, you know, if we want to keep a clean house, right? They're the manager parts. Perfectionists, people pleasers. They try to make sure, they try to control everything before anything happens. So they're the proactive parts of our system. If I just do A, B, and C, then I don't have to worry about anything happening after that. And really, it's all protective strategies. Again, it's protecting deeper wounds within our system, within us, that we don't really want to see the light of day. So, but what happens is these old parts of us can get triggered good, and our manager parts aren't doing the best job at that moment, and so we have what's called firefighter parts. These are the more extreme parts of us. This is the extreme thoughts that we have, the rage, the alcoholic, the addict. This is where it goes to. And the problem with trying to change ourselves is that many of us try to shun certain parts of ourselves. So if you grew up thinking anger was this really negative thing and it scared you and you want no part of anger, then as an adult, you're going to try to take that angry part of you and just disown it and act like it's not there. The problem is, almost like a child, right? The more you tell them no, the more you try to turn your back on them, the more they dig their heels in the sand, right? The more they come after you, the more powerful they get in your system. So my job working with clients is to help them build a connection with these parts, even the parts that are ugly, that bring up shame and guilt and make us feel bad about ourselves, even those parts. Because at the end of the day, those parts, as bad as they are, they're creating conflict on the surface, all types of issues in our lives. For our system, they're doing a job. Yeah, for our system, they're doing a certain job. And what they want is what many of us want. They want to feel seen. They want to feel validated. They want to feel heard, respected. And when you can start building a relationship with these inner parts of us, it starts shifting things inside of us that we didn't even know was there. Had no idea what's going to come out when you can actually take some of these parts of you and put them in their right place. It's not to diminish these parts, not to shun them away from ever. It's just what we're going to do is we're going to integrate these parts into our system. Same way I talked about the basketball team. You know, when the point guard is not doing his job, it's going to confuse the whole team. But when we can get that point guard, we can listen to his concerns, his worries, his fears, what he's got going on, and get him back out there and get him into position. He's now integrated with the system. All the other parts now start falling back into their own protective, I don't want to say protective role because they're not in protection mode. They just fall back into a different role, a more calm in our system, which is what so many of us want, especially with clients I come across. It's like, I just want to feel more peaceful and calm. And, you know, I don't want all this chaos and this conflict and this drama in my life. So the downside of all of that is it takes a lot of work. It's not just going to come. It's stuff you have no idea about. It's stuff you've never learned. If you haven't been taught by somebody with this. So it's be patient with yourself. You know, self-love is not just this like foo-foo saying. I do believe in self-love and self-compassion, especially when it comes. We have such harsh inner critics that just beat ourselves up, and very hard on ourselves. And where we learned why those inner critics are there in our system and again, where they came from, where they stem from, we'll get to understand them a little bit more and see why they play that part, even though it's, you know, we don't like it. So as time goes on and you start putting this into your life, now all of a sudden communication with your loved one is just different. You're still scared. You're still trying to figure things out as you work together. But now you're bringing real adult issues to the table that you've been ignoring for years, maybe decades. And you'll notice that in both, there's less reactivity. And in some cases, if somebody is in survival mode, or if they are a little bit more reactive, we can always just come back to it, right? We trust each other enough to say, hey, we're not just going to act like this problem ain't here. But right now, maybe it's not the best time to try to tackle it. Maybe we just need a night to sleep on it, or, you know, eat food. You know, sometimes we're hungry. And then we'll come back to and then try to be there for each other. And that's where the deeper connection comes in. And then once I believe that deeper connection starts to settle in between mom and dad, between the parents, between the spouses, that's when the kids start to really pick up on what's going on. We have a lot. I've learned we have so much more responsibility than we realize as parents. In fact, it scared me when I started learning about how impactful I am with my son, with my tone of voice, with my looks, a look I could give with how I show up. And I'm like, man, I have a lot of work to do. But at the same time, better me than him having to do this in 20, 30, 40 years when his life is a mess. I'd much rather learn this right now with me and my wife doing the best we can so that we can at least, we're not perfect and our son's not going to be perfect, but we are trying to break cycles within our families that hasn't been touched in generations. And it's going to take a lot of work, but I'm proud, and I'm proud of my wife too for being on this journey with me, because at the end of the day, it's my son that is going to reap the benefits. And what I mean by I mean mental health, emotional health, spiritual guidance. That's going to go a long way for him in his life and in his future relationships and how he goes on further in his own journey. And I actually bring him into the office with me, which has been very cool. The dynamic in the office with him is interesting because he comes in and he's a deeply feeling kid, as they say. And he's a lot more open here in the office, but he's even getting better a little bit lately at home too, we've been noticing. And I've talked to so many parents that don't get that. Their parents don't talk to them. Their kids don't talk. They don't open up. They're not really involved in their children's emotional world and what's going on in their inner world. And I get it. That kids can have that, but I think it's a safety thing. I believe that children, once they feel that emotional connection, that safety, they'll be a little bit more open to wanting to share what's going on with them. And I hear this from parents all the time. They look at their children and like, I don't know what's going on with them. I have no idea what the issue with my kid is. And sometimes it could be an issue of what's happening in their adult life, right? Within the parent, within the dynamic of their adult relationship with their spouse. That's hard to hear. I know it was tough for me to listen to and take that in, but I'm a firm believer in connection before correction. So it's connecting with our kids' inner emotional world first, which is funny because when I was learning about that, I was like, no, I do that all the time. Like I was using my counseling background. I'm like, yeah, no, I totally get it. Like, yeah, no, I do that. And, I wasn't doing it. I didn't know what I didn't know. I was saying things to my mentor and I started learning like, wow. So my son didn't need that. In fact, my son actually needed this first. And I would just go right old school parenting, right? I would just try to correct him. Oh, just do this, just practice more, just try your best. I would give him all these explanations. And it would just leave him emotionally like flat, right? Like he'd be angry or frustrated. And all he needs is for me or his mom is just to step in and say, hey, you struck out in baseball. Like, yeah, that's frustrating. I get it. Hey, your team lost in basketball. That stinks. You're upset. Yeah. I totally understand you being upset. See, now if they're angry and they're upset and we don't like some of their behaviors that are tied to it after, that's what we get stuck on. And so we try to change that. But it'll go a longer way if we just try to connect with them first. And then when our child feels, or if we emotionally connect first, then, later on that day or the next day, then we can, correct, talk about maybe practicing more or talk about what they could have, tried a little bit different in the game next time. Because our kids, they won't take it as an attack. They'll trust us a little bit more when we do that. So anyway, Thanks for you guys logging on. There's, still, 7 minutes left or so. If anybody has any questions or anything, I know some of you have been writing as we go. Any feedback? Thanks for jumping on. I appreciate you guys logging on and listening to me ramble on. But I'm a firm believer in what I try to help other people with. It has been a significant game changer in my life. There's no doubt about it. And I used to sit on that. I used to kind of not really share too much of it. And the truth of the matter is I really want to help families out there. Not only because I have a passion, but I know I can do it. With what I've been through, with what I've learned over the years, I wound up getting certified as a trauma coach as well. And now that I'm working with clients and I see me helping them in their lives, I love doing it. So yeah, that was I had a big sad part of me that I never tapped into for a long time. I wanted no part of that sadness. And once I started getting in touch with these protective parts, and this is well into sobriety, which is so wild, right? Because you just thought once I stopped drinking, I'd be all right. But I didn't realize how much grief I have in my system. And the grief comes from all the abandonment pain and the losses that I received during childhood. And again, it's not to attack my parents, right? But when I teach people in here, in my client work, what they should have received, they're like, what? I'm going over everything that, and that's when people start to realize oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know I was supposed to. I didn't know that was all part of it. And not only is it part of it, but it runs deep within us, and it can leave these lasting pains within us. And so I had a ton of grief. I still do. But I have been able to tap into a lot of sadness. And I posted that teenager exercise I did not too long ago, and that brought up some tears. I also did one when I was 4 or 5 years old, and that brought up tears. Really powerful exercises moved me to crying for that kid, for what he went through. Again, not just my parents, just that high school picture. It's man, I just remember just feeling so overwhelmed. And freshman year, I was in such a challenging high school, competitive high school, and I just felt like I was just drowning. I just didn't think I was going to be able to keep up. And everybody in sports, which I love, I just saw them as just so much better. And everyone was getting bigger and stronger, and I was still kind of short and skinny. And so I look back on that kid, and I just think of all that stuff that he never talked to anybody about. That stuff he didn't. And now as the adult now, I step in that with him. I let that inner teen live, because that's where I found a lot of that inner peace and that calmness comes from, right? It's the same way. We had such a rough winter, but without that long winter of cold and the darkness and the snow, these 70-degree days wouldn't feel as good. So we got to sit in the pain sometimes in order to get to that other side and feel that sunshine. And that's something I wasn't willing to do for a very long time. I just want what's good. I just want the good in life. I don't want to have to tap into my anger and my sadness and my past pain and some of the emotional neglect that I created, and not just happened to me, but I created in other people's lives as well. So it's not easy being held accountable, but if you got the right person and they hold your hand in it for a minute, and they guide you through it, almost like they call it reparenting. You're not in this alone, and that's what I help the people I work with, the same thing. I never push them too far. I don't go past what their system is willing to deal with in the moment. This is a slow process. With trauma work, it's very serious, and I never want anybody leaving re-traumatized without without that support. So it's sensitive work. I love it though. It's like, I don't know what it's like to hit the lottery financially, but on an emotional, mental, spiritual level, I would much rather this than just a bucket full of money, thrown at me. All that materialism stuff is nice. I guess it depends on the attachment to it. I still want nice things, but I don't need them for my identity. I don't need them to make me who I am. I don't need them to, make me, show up in life with my neighbors and other people of like, oh, look, I'm doing all right. Now, for me, I put this emotional, spiritual stuff top of the list. And especially with my marriage getting so much healthier, so much stronger. My connection with my wife, that's, you can't put money on that. And because of that, watching our son grow up with two healthy parents and meeting his emotional needs. I didn't hear about emotional needs until like 4 years ago. If I could run my own school, I would get rid of math. I hated math. Math stunk. I was so bad at math, just sitting in class all day and, the science and stuff. And I hope I'm not stepping on toes for anybody that hates math or that likes math or science or anything like that. But I'm like, wow, how great would it be to go to school for like, all those developmental stages I talked about, like Eric Erickson talks about, or learning about boundaries. Like who talks about like boundaries? Man, what an amazing education it's been for me, learning about how I can set boundaries, how boundaries help me and my system out. Like, night and day. So I can't see or hear anybody, which is new to me, doing this Facebook Live. So if you want to type anything in, you could type something in. I've been going pretty solid here for like an hour, which I don't mind. I actually love talking. I enjoy sharing what I know, and I found the past couple of years, this is where I can bring value in people's lives. I wasn't great in math and things like that, or, sports, but this is what I feel pretty good in. Yeah, any questions or anything? Yeah, so I just want to make sure, like, people understand too, a lot of what I talk about is a lot of accountability to it, a lot of responsibility to it. But there's also a lot of self-love and self-compassion to it. So it's not about being perfect. It's not about being a terrible spouse or a terrible parent. It's about just, I meet people where they're at in life. I meet people where they're at in life, and there's no judgment to that. I've been through the ringer in my life. I've lost really good things in my life because of the way I was living. And I suffered the consequences. I dealt with a lot of anxiety and depression because of that. And so I really feel for people when they come in and they're battling things that they don't even know if they can deal with on their own. So my message is always like one of support. I don't care where you are on your journey. I don't care what you did in your past, how horrible you feel as a person. I don't care what people are saying about you. You come into me, we sit in this office, we meet on a Zoom call. None of that is going to make me see you any differently. God made us to be loved. I'm a firm believer in that. And so my job is to show up with love, with a heart. And believe it or not, that goes such a long way in this counseling work. I actually enjoy this coaching work because sometimes in therapy, I didn't feel that connection. I almost felt like that heart to heart wasn't there, and I get it. Therapists have to be like super professional. I'm not to say that I'm not being professional, but they have certain guidelines and certain ways about themselves that they have to kind of stick by. And for me, it just didn't work that way. I want to understand you. I want you to understand me and where I'm coming from. And that went a long way with my own, inner healing and work. Was, I didn't feel judged for my mentor helping me. So it's a big deal when you can trust the person that you're working with, that they're not going to judge you when you start talking about serious things that you've been hiding within your soul for so long. Oh, Big Miranda, thank you, buddy. Yeah. So I had a great job when I was 21 years old. I worked for the New York City Department of Sanitation. Great job. Hit the lottery getting that job. Making great money. Meeting good guys on that job. And I lost it. I lost the job about 7.5 years. I lost everything. I lost a lot of friendships because of that. Guys I lost touch with. I lost my pension, lost all my finances that came with that job. But the biggest, most impactful thing was I lost a lot of self-respect. I lost hope when I lost that job. That's something I don't really share too much with people. When I lost that job, it was probably the darkest moments of my life. And I lived like that for about 2 years, trying to mask it through humor, being one of the guys. But the truth of the matter was, I didn't want to be here anymore. And I just thought, how low can a person go? How low can someone go? How much can they lose in life? How many knocks on the head can they take without just throwing the towel in? And I had gotten to that point where I was so freaking done. And God had a new plan. He had a different thing for me. Thank God those thoughts are long gone. Those dark days are past me right now. But my past is something I've stepped into because it has helped me into the man I am today. It shaped me into who I am today and how I show up for my family and how I show up for others. Yeah, there's a lot of hope for people out there. A lot of hope. And I wish more people knew that, you know? I wish more people knew how much hope there was. I deal with it here in my client, in my coaching work. People that are done. You know, people that are really, really done. And I just wish, right, they knew on some level what they have to offer. Even people that don't come in. You know, there's so many people out there that could use my help. And I don't mean just even me, just help. And we just won't. I had so many chances to get that help, and I'm going to figure this out. I am not as bad as people make it seem to be. I'm all right. I'm okay. Like, I am not willing to step into standing in front of somebody and saying, I am hurting. I'm hurting. I have so much in me. I just don't want to talk about it. I just, thank God I pushed past that fear, because I do believe that's what it is for a lot of us. It's fear-based. It's not wanting to step into, I just want to become an adult. I just want to get older and never look back. I don't want to, I'm not saying we need to live in the past, but the past can be our greatest asset if we're willing to, just withstand it just for a little bit, because that's where so much of me really lies. My emotional inner world. I'm stuck in the past. John Bradshaw is great. John Bradshaw talks about being an adult child. That was so offensive to me. Like, how dare you? I'm not an adult child. Like, what are you talking about? I'm a grown man, And then the more I got into this work, I'm like, wow, Mike, I'm an adult child, right? What he means is, on an emotional level, when I'm triggered, I react to a certain stage of my life that I got stuck at because I didn't have an adult to help me process. Let's say you had let's say you had a boyfriend or girlfriend break up with you. It's the first serious relationship, and you're just crushed, right? And you go to your friends. I'm looking at it from a guy perspective, and it's kind of like, have a beer, smoke this, don't worry about it, Meanwhile, you're hurting inside, right? You just got to act like you're not. You just got to figure it out, right? Or you try to go to your parents, and your parents are like, oh, stop it, you're gonna have. You're going to be dating more people, like, your relationship was terrible anyway. Like, who knows what parents say? And again, that is not helping us process the hurt that we have. And so that's what I mean. That hurt doesn't go anywhere. It lives within inside of us. And then you fast forward 30, 40, 50 years down the road, and somebody triggers that wound of rejection. And we're going to go right back to that 14, 15, 16, 17, 18-year-old part of us that felt rejected, that didn't have anybody to go to process this through with. But all we see is what's on the surface, All we see is what's right in front of us. We have no idea that we're reacting to something that was, stuck in the past with. And even when we try to talk to somebody about it, it's almost like, get out of here. I'm 50 years old. I'm not reacting like, the 15-year-old, self of me. Like, get out of here. So, yeah, this work takes an open mind. Donnie, man. Wow. Holy cow. That'll bring a tear to me, man. Yeah, that's great. Wow, good for you, Donnie. I'm proud of you, man. Yeah, I hope you're proud of yourself, too, with that. 12 years in August. What a huge deal. I had no idea. You were 12 years. Wow. Man. And I remember you helping me at my grandmother's house, Put all that installation in. Insulation. And then we went running right out after that. We wasted no time. Yeah. Yeah, I always think about you, Miranda. I think about Aunt Junior as well. Yeah, man, we all need those second, third, sometimes fourth chances for something to take hold. And yeah, you're a solid guy, Aunt, and I actually became to really care for your son, you know? When I started to get to know him and he was coming around and we were doing a lot of the softball and basketball and yeah. I don't want to say he's a good kid because he's not a kid. He's a grown man with his own family, but yeah. Your son's a solid guy. All right. So I've been rocking and rolling here for like an hour, 15 minutes. This actually was great. I loved it. I haven't done a Facebook Live before, a little different, but it was pretty good. Yeah, so I'll give everyone just a minute. If they just want to say anything real quick, quick question, anything like that. Otherwise, I appreciate everyone who logged on. Hopefully it helps somebody. And I'm always here. I'm always here for old school chat. None of this texting. Old school chat, old school phone call. I'm with that. All right. Signing off. Bye-bye.